Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Hart, and today I'll be breaking down the 8-game NBA slates we have here on DraftKings for Friday night. $100,000 up top to first place, so a huge takedown opportunity for us today. I'll be going over my favorite spin-up plays, mid-range plays, and some value plays we can definitely be looking at for today's slate. As always, injury news will probably change the value plays before the slate begins, so we always have to keep updated on that. And if you're new to the channel, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and let's get into this slate breakdown. Before I get into the slate breakdown, I just want to do a quick little recap of my lineup from last night. Went with Melton, Dinwiddie, Barton, Kuzma, Okongwu, Simons, Little, and Young. Finished in the top 1%. As I tweeted it yesterday, I was not feeling good about, yesterday's slate once we got all the injury news, and then obviously the Thursday night football game, that was gross and disgusting as well. And so I played super light, put in, my lineups into very cheap single entries, and the lineups actually ended up doing well. So that's a little bit annoying, but win's a win. It doesn't matter how big or little it is. As I say, you want to snowball those wins because it means your process, the process you've chosen was good. You were on a good path to success, and you got to keep repeating that. So with Melton, I was expecting him to be a little bit more owned, but yeah, he was okay. Just couldn't hit a shot, so that's kind of a little bit of frustrating there. Dinwiddie, I talked about, really liked him. Surprised he wasn't a little bit more owned. He was way too cheap for his role. He smashed. Obviously, it helps that Luka was, not doing too well, and Dinwiddie started off very hot in that first quarter, but he was great. Will Barton talked about how I preferred him as my favorite value play. He was great. Kuzma, I pivoted to him once Porzingis got ruled out. Being the leader of that team, knew he was going to chuck a lot. Ended up giving a double-double, so he was fantastic. I know everyone was on Gafford. I just couldn't trust him with the foul trouble. He also didn't start, so I knew his minutes maybe weren't going to be secure. I knew he'd be in the rotation, but, with the foul trouble, with him not starting, I knew they could, throw in 5 to 6 different guys off the bench, and maybe he gets lost in the mix. So I did go to Okongwu, who was a little bit, more expensive, but obviously, way less owned, and he actually did very well. Double-double, was really banking on Capella getting in foul trouble. Capella didn't. He actually did very well once again, which is a little bit surprising. Yeah, Okongwu was good. Simons was, decent. Can't complain about 37, but, he did shoot, I think it was 2 of 30. Let's take a look here. 5-18, yeah, he was not good at all. And then I was going to go to Keon Johnson here, with all that late news, but he got ruled out, so I went to Nasir Little. He ended up doing, decent. And then Trae Young, just super disappointing, extremely low owned. 40 fantasy points is just frustrating. I keep getting these, superstars very low owned in these great spots, and they just keep, giving me, snowflakes. It's just pretty frustrating, but let's move on to the slate breakdown. We got Denver and Boston. Should be a great game. I played Jokic last slate, and he had the worst foul trouble I've ever seen from a star player in the past 5 seasons. But yeah, he looks great here at 11-7. As of right now, it might be a little bit too hard to get 2 guys, about that 10.5K salary range. But once again, we'll get a bunch of injury news, I'm assuming, by the time the slate starts. So we'll be able to probably easily fit in a few of these guys, if not a couple. So Jokic, do like him a good amount there against Boston, who's been, a top 5 bad defensive team this season. Murray, 6,400. Don't mind going to him. He's really starting to pick it up. Minutes are secure now. A little bit over 30 is definitely his floor. So 6,400, he looks good in this matchup. MPJ, Aaron Gordon, looked decent. I really liked Aaron Gordon in this matchup against Indiana. Obviously, Jokic being in foul trouble really helped him out there. Pretty much became the center for them. So I really just prefer getting to Murray and Jokic. Porter Jr. looks decent. His ceiling is kind of capped, alongside Murray and Jokic. So I really think you just get 2 of those guys at the top. That's really it. KCP, once again, maybe you can go to him at 5K off the bench. He's decent, but yeah, Bones has been doing well off the bench as well. So, it's just pretty much to get 2 guys at the top for me. That's really it. On the Boston side, Tatum, price really hasn't moved. He's been very safe when it comes to his floor this year. It's pretty much 45. his ceiling can get to the 60, 70 plus range if he's hitting his shots. So he's always in play as a very, very solid spend up play. Jaylen Brown, scoring dependent, but he's been doing well this year. Does have, a similar ceiling as Tatum, but once again, his floor is a little bit lower. So I don't mind him at 8,200. The rest of the team, Marcus Smart's just going to be that contrarian play. He can't have those games like he did against Memphis, which obviously will, greatly help you out. But otherwise, I don't really think you need to force anyone in besides, maybe playing the 2 stars at the top, in the spot against Denver. Brogdon is out, so maybe, Grant Williams will see some more run. He'll probably get 20 plus. He looks like a decent value play. Derek White looks like a solid value play. Should see about 25 minutes. A little scoring dependent, but 4K, don't mind going to him. Hauser's getting a little bit more run, but he is, I'd rather get to White or Williams, and then, maybe they'll dust off some Peyton Pritchard, who was, pretty solid last year. A decent point per minute guy. So at 3,000, if he gets 15 to 20 minutes, I don't mind taking a shot at him at $3,000. Moving on to Phoenix and Orlando. Chris Paul is questionable. Obviously, if he is out, we can definitely look to Devin Booker, who was great against Minnesota, 59.5 fantasy points. Assist number went way up. You can kind of expect the same thing. A little bit, even though he would take on that high usage role once again, there is a little bit of risk on him just because he is so scoring dependent, but in a good matchup against one of the worst defenses in the league in Orlando, would, have a good amount of interest in him. Same thing with, running it back with, campaign 5,700. He'd be way too cheap. Don't know if you can expect 23 points from him again, but, you can really expect the same kind of rebound and assist numbers from him. Bridges and Ayton are definitely in play, but if Paul's back, really no interest in any of these guys. Maybe you could still look to campaign at 5,700, but at the same time, I really want to play any of these guys. Maybe you could take a shot on Torrey Craig if you need some cheap value, 3,800. He should see about 25 minutes. Just comes down to if he's hitting the shot. If he does, he can get you 20 plus fantasy points. Otherwise, if Paul's in, don't really like anyone on Phoenix. If he's out, I see Booker and Payne pretty much become almost must plays, kind of on that fringe. And then you can definitely look to Bridges, who did well. Don't really expect him to shoot 20 times. Maybe closer to that 12 to 15 mark. But he looked decent. Ayton looked decent as well. So we'll have to wait on that news. On the Orlando side, we have Paolo questionable. If he's in, not much I like on this, Magic side, because he'll end up becoming the, obviously number one player on their team in terms of usage. And that price, 8,700, is just a little too expensive for me. If he's out, Wendell looks decent. Had a little bit of a rough game. Only shot it 9 times against Dallas. Pretty low scoring game there. Do expect him to step it up. Pretty decent matchup against Ayton. Would have a good amount of interest in him at 7,600 if Banchero is still out. Obviously would elevate guys like Franz Wagner, Bol, Jalen Suggs. I think Jalen Suggs and Wendell would be my 2 favorite plays if Banchero's out. If he's in, obviously I don't really have much interest in this team. Chuma would probably get this inserted into the starting lineup like he did last game, 32 minutes. He'd be a solid value play at 4,500, not the best, not the worst. T. Ross, always that tournament play. When he's going to see the minutes, I just really hope he hits his shot. And at 4,300, not really getting him for much of a discount. And then Mo Bamba will probably see 20 minutes off the bench. I actually don't mind going to him at 4,300. It's a little bit more of a dart throw if Banchero is out. Detroit, if you played Cade Cunningham against Boston, you got screwed. He had, I think, 1 fantasy point at halftime. Finished with 11, 1 of 11. Just a horrendous game from him. 7,200 for him is way too cheap, even in this kind of slow game against the Knicks. So I really like him. Obviously, he's questionable, so we'll have to keep an eye out on that. If he's out, Jaden Ivey becomes pretty much a must-play. Back-to-back fantastic games for him. Double-doubles, close to a triple-double in back-to-back games on not a lot of shots as well. So do have a good amount of interest in him. 5,700 is too cheap for him, even in this matchup. It becomes even a better play if Cade's out. Obviously, Sadiq Bey would get a huge usage bump if Cunningham is out. 5,500, he's always a tournament play just because he's very boomer bust. Bogdan, you can definitely go to him, 5,400. He's kind of cooled off since the start of the season, but, he does have a little bit of a ceiling. And at 5,400, if he's hitting the shots, he could get you 40 fancy points. So these Detroit guys are pretty cheap. Isaiah Stewart looks decent, not shooting the ball a ton, but is still, getting those double-doubles. Yeah, I think all these Detroit guys are cheap, so I don't mind, taking a few pieces. Yeah, that's really it. On New York Knicks side, we have Randall, 7,900, just a little too expensive for me, even in a solid matchup here against Detroit. He's been doing better recently, 3 straight games over 40 fantasy points, but rather get to Brunson, who is a little bit cheaper, coming off a terrible, terrible game. They got blown out by like 30. He shot 4-14. Their team just looked terrible. But yeah, 6,800 for Brunson. Yeah, a little too expensive, or a little too cheap for me. The lowest price he's been since the start of the season. So really like him going against this Detroit team. Yeah, think he's a very solid play. Barrett, 6,600. Looks decent. Just prefer getting to Brunson. Hartenstein, it's all 15 minutes. I don't know. I don't understand the minute situation with him, because he was getting huge minutes off the bench when Mitchell Robinson was, starting. And now that Mitchell Robinson's out, you'd think Hartenstein would start. He doesn't. Sims has been coming off the bench and starting for them. So I do have a good amount of interest in Sims. This is a way better matchup going against Detroit than it was against Minnesota and Brooklyn. So he's a very, very solid rebounder. He hasn't really showed it yet, but he's a guy who can get you some blocks. He's very foul prone because he tries to go for blocks. Not the best defender, but he definitely has that huge double-double upside when it comes to, he could go out there and get you 15, 20 rebounds, especially in this matchup against Detroit, who's not a good shooting team. I do have a good amount of interest in Sims here at 3,400, and he's a power forward center eligible. That really does it for me on the Knicks side. On the Toronto Raptors side, we have Pascal Siakam still out, so for Van Fleet looks very good. 8,400, price really hasn't moved. The usage there, the minutes are there. You know what you're getting from Van Fleet, so 8,400, very, very solid play. Scotty Barnes, 8K, not the best. I'd prefer just getting to Van Fleet or paying down for OG. OG's price really hasn't moved. I don't get it because he's pretty much the same play as Scotty. Maybe a little bit less upside when it comes to assists, obviously, but he's shooting the ball a ton. He's averaging 3 steals a game, which is insane. So yeah, OG at 7,100, way better play than Scotty. So Scotty obviously will be less owned compared to Van Fleet and OG. So yeah, Gary Trent, no 2 scoring dependent. If he's hitting the shots, can't get you 35 plus, but would rather prefer taking a shot on those, Detroit guys in the same kind of price range who do have the same upside. And I'd say have more opportunities. Boucher, I ran it with him. He's more of that boomer bust player. Just didn't play versus Houston in a fantastic matchup. Yeah, it's just one of those things. His minutes are kind of all over the place. Maybe he gets a little bit more now that Precious is out. But they will dust off. Otto will probably see, 20 plus minutes. You can go to him for some value. Not going to be a high usage guy, but, can get you there in 3,600. Thaddeus Young was the forward they kind of went to off the bench over Boucher and those other guys. So I do like him a good amount at 3,100. Now, it's one of those things, he could go out there and play 25 minutes and really do nothing. But he is usually a pretty solid point per minute guy if he's going to get involved. So do have a good amount of interest in him as a cheap value play with Precious being out. Obviously, really like Van Fleet and OG. On the OKC side, SGA's price is still not moving. Don't understand it. Averaging about 52 fantasy points per game. Even in good matchups, even in bad matchups, he's been rock solid. So not really sure why his price hasn't moved. In this matchup, maybe it's a little bit riskier, but like him a good amount. Josh Giddey, I think he looks very solid here. He has massive upside with the double-doubles, whether it's points and rebounds or points and assists, as you saw last game versus Milwaukee. Did go into double overtime, so that helped a bit. But yeah, 6,500 is definitely too cheap for Giddey. The rest of the team, Basley is out, so maybe that's more minutes for, Kenrich, JRE, Wiggins, Muscala, all those guys. It's pretty much just the top 2 guys for me on this side. You can definitely take a shot on Poku. Hope he plays, 30 minutes. If he does, 5,200. Pretty decent salary for him. He's just a little bit risky for me. On to Milwaukee and San Antonio. Obviously, the 2 guys at the top are out once again. So Bobby Portis becomes a very solid play here at 7,000, going against a bad Spurs team. Didn't have the best game last game. Expect him to bounce back here. So 7,000, he looks great. Brook Lopez actually looks pretty decent, 6,300. Once again, game 1 and 2, I think double overtime as well, or at least overtime. And yeah, he played 46 minutes. Don't think you can expect that. Maybe closer to 32. But yeah, he looks very solid as well here in this matchup. Javon Carter, too cheap here, 5,200. Obviously, we can't expect him to shoot the ball 27 times and shoot it 55% from the field, but he's definitely firmly in play. 5,300, going to see most likely 35 minutes. So I do have a good amount of interest in him. Grayson looks decent. I would expect him to shoot the ball more. I know he's more kind of that 3-and-D guy, but yeah, he should definitely shoot the ball more. So he looks pretty solid. It will be pretty low owned because people are going to want to get up to the other 3 guys. Beauchamp looks okay. Only 30 minutes in like a double overtime game. Not the best. Did shoot the ball pretty well, which we didn't see from him, at all this season so far. So decent value play there at 4,400. Pat Connaughton might be back. If he is, depends on, the minutes limit. If he's on one, I want to go to him. If he isn't, do have a good amount of interest in him at 4,100. George Hill should see about, I'd say, 25 minutes around that area. Looks okay. Nuora, very surprised he didn't get more run. He did shoot the ball poorly, so maybe that kind of, factored into it. But he's a guy who's an absolute microwave off the bench. He can score in bunches. He's a very, very good scorer. I'm surprised he didn't start. I think they kind of wanted him to come off the bench and provide some scoring, and he really didn't do that. So I do think he got limited, but I would assume you could see 20 minutes from him off the bench. I don't mind going to him. He should be super low owned. People are going to see this box score, see that he really didn't play last game, but I think that's more of a mirage. I do think he's going to, play well and play good off the bench here. So I do like taking that shot on Nuora there at 3,800. On the Spurs side, we have Keldon Johnson at the top, looks great, 7,100. Same thing with Vassell. I love him in this matchup against the G League Milwaukee Bucks now that Giannis and Drew are out. So they look fantastic. Don't mind a game stack here. Do think it can kind of be like that last game for Milwaukee. Porto looks decent, 6,700. Just prefer getting to the 2 guys at the top. Trey Jones, okay. It's really just the 2 guys at the top for me. And that's really it. Zach Collins is out, so you could definitely look to Richardson off the bench, kind of that microwave score, decent value play. Bassey has been getting the backup center run over Zach Collins because Zach Collins is obviously injured. So you can look to him if you want a cheap center option. Has been pretty productive in a limited amount of minutes. Very foul prone, but yeah, he looks decent as a value play. Minnesota and Memphis, this should be very solid game to stack. Towns looks solid at 9,300. Gobert's back. He looks decent. Should be a bunch of rebounding opportunities for him. I think my favorite play would be Anthony Edwards. It's pretty tough getting to these guys just because they all have a ton of usage. But I think Anthony Edwards is my favorite play. 3 straight games, not the best games from him. He does have a huge, huge ceiling. Really hasn't flashed it yet this year. Only 2 games into the 50s, but I love him in this matchup. His price is getting, a little bit too cheap, so I do like going to him at 7,500. That's really it on this side. Anderson seen about 20 minutes off the bench. Noel, same thing. You really just prefer getting to. It's pretty much just going to be Anthony Edwards. I'd say my second favorite play would probably be Towns, and that's really it. Memphis side, Ja looks too cheap at 10,000. Bane has actually been very, very well. Very good, the past 3 weeks. So I don't mind going to him at 8,100. Maybe he's just a little too scoring dependent for me, but he's had a ton of usage. Brooks, he's just there. Same thing with Steven Adams. He's been doing very well when it comes to rebounding the past week. So Minnesota's a team that shoots a ton. You can definitely look to him. That's really it on the Memphis side. Cleveland, Golden State, Mitchell, scoring dependent, shot it 28 times. If you want to go there, I don't hate it, but I prefer getting to Garland. Price came up, even though he played terrible. 1 of 9, 6 points, 8 assists. 16.5 fantasy points. I think it's one of those, you buy back low, running back with him, especially in this matchup. He looks great, 7,400. Allen, there should be a good amount of rebounding opportunities with Golden State. Don't mind him at 6,600. LeVert really stepped up for Darius last game. Don't think you need to chase that. Mobley looks solid. It just doesn't have a ton of double-double upside with, Allen in there getting the rebounds. I don't mind getting to Kevin Love as that tournament dart throw play. Should see 20 minutes. Will get extended if he's playing well. Grid three-point shooter. Has a massive, massive ceiling, even in a limited amount of minutes. 25 minutes, 35.5, 23, 51, 22, 44. So he could definitely get you there, like this matchup. That's really it on that side. Golden State side, it's pretty much just Wiggins and Curry. For me at the top. Poole, just more of that tournament dart throw play. He's been very up and down. Really would prefer getting into him if, one or two of the starters are out, but they're not. Green is always in play, I guess, just because he has that poor man triple-double upside. And then Clay, just a tournament dart throw play there. That's really it. And then the last game, Sacramento and LA. This should be a very popular game to stack and get a bunch of pieces from. On the Sacramento side, Fox, I think he's a little bit too cheap here, 8,600. Does have a little bit of a low, ceiling for, how much he is scoring, how well he is doing. So don't love it, don't hate it. So bonus, prefer getting into him if you're going to get to a piece from this Kings side. It does have that double-double, even triple-double upside. Looks like a fantastic matchup going against the Lakers, who are without LeBron James. I guess you can always take a shot on a Herter, hope he hits his threes. He could easily pay off that price tag if he is. If not, the next favorite play would be Monk, whose minutes have, been pretty solid the past 4 games. Not going to shoot the ball a ton at times, but you can definitely pay off that price tag, 4,500. Don't mind him here in this matchup. A little bit of a revenge game narrative, and then the Lakers should be popular to get pieces from. Anthony Davis, even with LeBron out, I don't know. I don't know if I can trust it. Maybe that back tightens up. We just really haven't seen a huge game from Anthony Davis yet. Had one against the Pelicans where he's very solid, and then solid against Denver, but the past few games, he just hasn't been the best. So I don't know if I can trust it at 10-2. Russ will be very, very high owned coming off the bench, but he should see 30-plus minutes. Going to absolutely chalk. So at 7,300, it's going to be hard not to play Russ. Don't mind Lonnie Walker. Will be that third scorer for them. Should see about 35 minutes if he does play. Should be a decent play there at 5,100. You could go to guys like, Troy Brown Jr., Austin Reeves, Kendrick Nunn even. He's been terrible at shooting the ball, but we'll have to keep an eye out on the starting lineup because you can definitely get some pieces from this Lakers side. And that's the slate breakdown. Hopefully you guys were able to get some information from this. Once again, there's a good amount of value, going into the slate. I'm sure we'll get more news, but if you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will have my core play video out pretty soon.